Good morning. This is Dr. Mia Luth. It is April 21st, 2026, at 9 a.m. Eastern Time, New York, USA. And there are some people who understand, and those who are coming into an understanding will likely see this at some point. However, I am aiming this directly at the fine folks of in Canada, True North Sports and Entertainment. I spent 15 years quietly walking alongside your hockey franchise, uh, the Winnipeg Jets. I stayed quiet online for the most part. I jumped in here and there to feel things out, but so I was becoming familiar with just the general market and how I'm very very familiar with how U.S. hockey and all those things work. So I spent 15 years learning and listening, and I was not very vocal. So I will be honest with you, it makes no difference how many followers I have. Okay, I know factually for sure at 100%, even if I don't see it happen myself, that the people who need to see and hear what I put up here do actually see and hear. Okay? The hockey verse means everything to me. And there are others like me. Okay? When it comes to the general manager position, um, there are some good things that I can say that Mr. Cheveldayoff and the management group have accomplished. Okay. However, I've said this previously, I'm going to say it again. Winnipeggers, none of you should be buying into any kind of situation in which the GM, Mr. Kevin Cheveldayoff, has a job as GM for life. That is not at all the case. Hockey clubs will sometimes reach out to other hockey clubs, especially in the summer, and there are people who I have learned a great deal about and from, who have saved ice hockey clubs, who have built ice hockey clubs, who have moved ice hockey clubs, who have owned ice hockey clubs, who have managed ice hockey clubs, and are still now managing. Um, one of the reasons why I completely, 100% understand um, the Philadelphia Flyers, the Broad Street Bullies. I don't live too far away from Philadelphia. So yeah, some of the games get blacked out, some of the Jets games, because I live very close to Philadelphia, and I've watched that. Um, I watched them grow and learn and just be a solid presence in the NHL. Daniel Briere, I think, is, you know, just by the fact that he played and not, I mean, it's all he's not that far removed from playing in the modern day National Hockey League, and just that alone. Okay, it's the same thing I would say about Iserman when he became a GM. Um, he understands what it's like to be in the locker room. He understands, what kind of coaching and what helps players, but what takes away from players trying to execute night in, night out. Because he's been through it and he's not that far removed from it. So I'm sure that when it comes to the Flyers, um, he would know, and the people who are, around him in the management group, right, will know. Okay, there's maybe a lack of communication somewhere. He would know at least where to look or who to reach out to, see about helping the team execute. Um, because he knows what it takes. And, he knows that there are people out there who can help franchises sometimes sort of like assess, and, you know, there's people who are like, they're just around the hockey verse who are sometimes called upon to help, prepare a team to move, or help get a franchise out of bankruptcy, or, jump in so that the franchise doesn't go into bankruptcy. And actually, all of the NHL clubs do actually sometimes get involved a little bit here and there to, do a little bit to help a club, because when a club goes into bankruptcy, it hurts the whole league. So I'm abundantly aware of that. I will become more and more vocal when it comes to Winnipeg. Um, I have been more vocal on Winnipeg Sports Talk, and anybody gets this over Winnipeg Sports Talk. I've been my goalie crease got hacked and whacked and hacked, and somebody got by me, and I don't know, my bank account's been, yeah. So I had to like unsubscribe from being a subscriber, but once I have a secure account and all that, I'll go back to it maybe. Okay, but just it's nothing that you guys did. Uh, that I can afford, because for me it comes up to 212 a month. Yeah, to be a member. Yes, um, but I had to, yeah, close down that account. So, yeah, still appreciate all that. I've been learning, about press who handle the Winnipeg Jets on a consistent basis. I've been learning about some of the air quote super fans and people who are very, very vocal. And I do have been listening to thoughts from, on X, formerly Twitter, of season ticket holders and so on and so forth. So, uh, and I am preparing to review all of the press, uh, all of the team, coach, and management interviews one more time before the beginning of next season. Things will start becoming a little more clear to everyone. Um, but what I'm going to say is that I do not say to anyone I know in hockeyverse or anyone behind the scenes things that I would not say to the general public, except for things that involve, right, so it hasn't happened yet. There's no signature. It hasn't been formalized, or personal, sensitive information. HIPAA stuff, and addresses and all. You see what I'm saying? Okay, there's just stuff that's private. It stays private. I do know that some of the more vocal and active chatters on Winnipeg Sports Talk and Kenny and Rennie, and to a lesser extent, Illegal Curve. I I only had so much time and energy this season, so I basically got into a rhythm, and I made sure that I was on the Jets check-in with Sarah and Jamie, uh, every possible game. I may have missed one or two along the way. I'm dealing, managing health situations, and things fluctuate. So but that was number one on my list. If I couldn't do anything else, for sure, I made sure to be on there and kind of get a sense of what the lines were and how people were feeling. And yes, understanding, they. I mean, yes, Sarah and Jamie. That's a fun duo. That's just a fun duo. They chirp each other a little, and to be honest with you, I know at one point I put up on there, if something didn't go wrong or there wasn't a technical glitch, it wouldn't be the check in anyway. In today's sort of modern tech digital world, it's always going to be the case that there's going to be some kind of like little, you know, like a microphone doesn't work, or there's an issue slows down on the internet. There's always going to be that. So nobody has to worry about those things. That happens a lot, right? Sometimes it's unavoidable, and you can't do anything about it, but just adjust, do it right on the fly. Um, I also made sure that I was able to watch the games. So I'm in the U.S. ESPN Plus or Select. I think they changed it, or they're changing it to Select. So I currently have YouTube TV. So at some point, that will be that will be included in YouTube TV, but it hasn't happened yet for me. So I paid extra, um, and the only games that I couldn't see live were the games that were broadcast on the NHL network. So a few, but all the other games I could see. Or yes, I was blacked out of Flyers, two Flyers games, but I was able to see them on. One was on TV where I could see it. The other one, yes, that actually was on. I think NBC, right? But I am not in the general area. I'm not close enough to Philadelphia to actually have had that game available to me. Kind of weird. It's like a weird. There's not always complete overlap. I live in what some people call the armpit of Maryland, and it is Cecil County, and we're up at the northern corner. So I can go to Philadelphia, get there 5 minutes. It takes 2 minutes to get to Delaware from here, driving. So, and it doesn't take too long to get to New Jersey. So, some of that there's not overlap. So I couldn't see that one game. So I had gotten used to listening to CJOB 680. So I'm also grateful for the internet radio, these things. One game I also missed entirely because I couldn't watch it on ESPN, and it was only on Power 97. But for some reason, my internet radio player, it just wasn't. I couldn't get it to work here, so that I could listen to Power 97. It's probably some dumb tech thing that I just didn't pick up on. No big deal. But I listened to pregame and I listen to postgame. So, number one, I try to make every single uh, check. Typically, for me, at 1:30 uh, p.m. in Central, right, 12:30, and I made and one of the weekday, at least one of the weekday Winnipeg Sports Talk, which is happens right afterward, with Hus and Remo and Connor and all the interesting guests. Uh, I actually participated more than I thought I would. So, but also when it came to Winnipeg Sports Talk, definitely like every Sunday. And for me, it's 10 a.m. Um, and I mean, I missed a couple, but yeah, I was there for most of them. And Kenny and Rennie, as much as I could manage, that's post game, and um, some of that also depended on their schedule too. So, uh, like I didn't make all of them, but I made I was able to at least once a week. So, also made it a point to watch the immediate post game presser for the coach and the guys live, and that was through YouTube and the Winnipeg Jets. Okay, and then yes, illegal curve also. Yeah, right. So I had spent a couple seasons sort of watching and listening. I know some people call it lurking. Yes, I was lurking. Okay, I'm trying to say with illegal curve too. Um, I was able to get to do some watch and listen to some illegal curve too. There's only 24 hours in a day, and I do have to manage a couple, crappy, serious medical conditions. So, can't always, can't always reliably do that. But I got in a pretty good rhythm this year, and I started really participating in conversation and sort of getting the feel. One thing I did notice is um, I just did not hear the perspective so much. A lot of people were wondering, well, why did the coach do this? And why did the coach do this? And why isn't this one here? And why isn't that one there? And I understand. Okay, but for some of you, I do need you also to understand this perspective, which you were not really provided a lot of from pretty much any of the open press. And some of the press, especially very close to, education about how things work for the club, the market, the game, GM positions, all those kind of things. There are some clubs who are better at that. So it's something that True North really helping people understand. Well, we have limitations because of the salary cap. There are things we can't just bring up. We have contracts. There are limits. All GMs are limited. All coaches are limited. Benches are limited. Um, Rosters. So sometimes coaches will change up or do a lineup based on who they're going to play. So it's not just independent of, oh, this one should be doing this and this one should be doing that. I'm not disagreeing with some of you. I am saying it simply may not have been possible, but it may have been done as a strategic situation based on who they were going to play. Because I'm going to use an example. Let's just say I follow on the first line, along with, our dynamic duo, okay, understood how to score on, let's just say, the Minnesota Wild. And they had a good track record. Do you understand what I'm saying? So, but let's just say that Velarde with the dynamic duo had a good track record of scoring on the Montreal Canadiens, and they understood how to maneuver, and they were successful. Okay, so you do all need to understand that part. Oops. Hold on. Hello? Yeah. Okay. All right, thanks. Bye. All right, hang on. I need to do something really quick. Okay, somebody coming over bringing me something. All right, Okay, so I'm just asking, take a deep breath, everybody. Okay, Jets fans, and right, there are reasons that there wasn't a lot of conversation that mentioned. Coaches will do that. Okay, coaches know, okay, when we play these guys, all right, and like these two on the fourth line and these two on the second line. Do you understand? Certain defensive pairings may not make sense to you, independently, but coaches and some of the players know, look, put us together because these guys always try and come in on the right. You understand? It may not be just simply this is what this should be. You understand? They have to think strategy, and they know that some pairings and some maneuvering of personnel is done to give the other team a hard time. Okay, everybody, I know. I'm not making excuses. I'm telling you the true facts of how coaches and the strategies happen. And that was not discussed a lot through any of the press. A lot of it was just saying that the Jets, as though, right, I don't think some of the press actually understands that part, which is a little concerning to me, considering, in the case of Paul Maurice and in Bones were both, at the very least, very informative and could explain things pretty well. Okay, so just understand that sometimes when you see, why doesn't this guy play or that guy? Hang on, let me. No, I might have a visitor coming in here. So if I disengage, it's because I've got somebody bringing me a humidifier to help me breathe a little better. Anyway, so just remember that it might not make sense to some of you. Hi. Oh, thank you.
I think it should be easy to set up, but if you need any help, just give me a call.
Okay. Yeah, no, I'm sure I can figure it out.
Yeah. it should be a pretty simple one, and it's one of the nicer ones. So
Yeah.
hopefully it works.
Great, thank you.
Uh-huh.
That'll
All
help.
right.
All
Enjoy your
right.
day.
See you later. There we go. Yeah, humidifier. Where I live, it's forced hot air, and we have window ACs, and uh, I'm trying to help me breathe. I get allergies, and I don't know. Anyway, so I have um, been given that for my health reasons. Anyway, so that part was not discussed a lot. It was discussed some here and there, but I don't think it was discussed enough for some, fans, especially the most vocal ones. You do have to take that into consideration as to why are these two guys playing together? Well, there's a high likelihood that a defensive pairing was put together because they know how to shut down certain players on the other team. Okay? So just keep that in mind, you understand, when you're looking at why certain players are here or there. It is all. I mean, coaches always, head coaches, it's all the same around the league, always consider, you know, sometimes it's with goalies. Like sometimes they'll put a goalie in, you may not understand why, but it's because this goalie seems to really understand how to, stop the other team. He gets the other team and kind of knows what to expect and has had good success. So just keep that in mind. But this is more aimed at True North Sports and Entertainment. And some of you may wonder what the hell, who cares about you? You're not, I know. To True North and Sports and Entertainment, there is, I cannot say this any other way than you will find that no matter the personnel you have on ice or the coaching staff that you have, there's no point in going through the process of trying to get another coach and retooling the team and rebuilding and doing any of that, because the issue is management. And I'm 100% sure of it now. This is me 15 years in. This is not me just jumped in. That's because, some of the fans and I wasn't vocally jumping in. I've been walking with this club since it became the Winnipeg Jets. Okay? And the best, most hockey smart decision that True North Sports and Entertainment can do right now is be actively seeking a different kind of GM. And I would not wait on that, and I would not hesitate to do that. You will find that the way Mr. Shoveldayoff approaches the public, and given the body language of this, the press availability from yesterday, the fact that he had to have a written piece of paper is a very bad sign when it comes to GMs in the National Hockey League. I am well schooled in watching GMs and their press from all over the league, including Canada, and that's just not good news. It's not good news for True North Sports and Entertainment that his body language, the way he answered questions, and the fact that he had to have some written, comments. The one thing that I can say for sure, I am not one of those kind of people who just automatically, fire the coach, retool. I never do that. I never do that. And I wait before I start speaking up. And I have facts and information and my ability to read locker rooms and understand the game and understand organizational charts and what it takes to help the team execute on ice night in, night out. I've got years and years and years on it. And there's a few people, insiders in the National Hockey League, who do know me, even if some people in Winnipeg think I just showed up. Uh, the fact here, I will give you this. I will say, if I were the GM, one, I would know I'm not doing it all by myself. There's other management, and then yes, one, I would definitely be very, very making sure I have my communication with at least the head coach often. Often. I'm not sure how often, depending on where the head coach could fit in a half hour or so, but it would happen often, right? Um, Around game 8 of the losing streak, I can guarantee you, I would not ask anybody's permission. I would simply just send off an email to management and True North Sports and Entertainment and coaching staff to say, at the end of the week, I am going to be right. I'm going to make myself available to the press at the end of the week. I just tell them. There's no asking permission. This is what I am going to do. So FYI. Um, and at the very least, a half hour, if not more, depending on what kind of questions and how things go. And there I would say press availability, or depending on certain circumstances, okay, at the very least, a good 15-minute to half hour. Um, yes, like video conversation, not conversation, but I would send something out to the general public. If it had to be pre-recorded and sent out, there would still be information coming from GM. No way would I. I'm saying, if it were me, probably around game 8, I would just simply know without anybody telling me, point blank, I need to address the press and I need to, address the fans, and I need to let them know, okay, here's what's happening. We are constantly evaluating the Moose for readiness. That is a constant thing. It happens all the time. You know, Several times a week we kind of assess. So that is constantly happening. We have some, open communication with a couple franchises here and there. Given the type of the year, there's not a lot, but perhaps there is something that we can do to help, you know, the guys who do it every night on ice execute a little better and have what they need to be as successful as possible. Um, I have, you know, made it a point to communicate with the head coach for at least 15 minutes every single game day. And if the head coach tells me, these guys still a little injured and we need to bolster this, I would find a way. I would find a way. I do get the sense I get good hockey sense. good NHL hockey sense, even though I don't have a penis. That might be an exception to some, but I I know that there are insiders, National Hockey League, you do know I do. And I would not be looking for a new coach. I would not be spending time trying to look for a new coach. I would also be letting Josh Morrissey know, no, we still have a good plan, Josh. At this point in time, the best thing that True North Sports and Entertainment can do for the Winnipeg Jets and Winnipeg and the National Hockey League and for their own selves would be have very, very extensive look. You really should be actively seeking a general manager. That might mean that certain other management positions are moved around. You may have one in house. I'm not entirely sure about that. But yes, look inside and outside and do it now. Do not wait. Like I said, there's no way. If I were a GM, no one would have to say a damn word to me. I'd be okay. Game 8, I'm in. Get I don't care. I don't care what anybody would tell me, including management or bosses or anybody else saying, nope, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to put information out to the general public. They're going to hear from me. I mean, preferably, I would want to do live press and do that kind of thing. But given certain circumstances, and my health is one of them, I would definitely put out a public statement, though, video recording, saying to everyone, yes, this we are, looking at. We're talking. There are a couple open doors with some clubs. Okay, we are assessing the news all the time. I have conversation with the head coach every game day, and I listen to what he thinks might help if there's some personnel management that I have the ability to do something about. Remember, there's a salary cap, so sometimes some of you who are vocal don't really realize. Okay, it's not excuse; it's truth. You're getting truth. Okay, I'm that kind of person would tell you we can't manage that kind of maneuver, but we might be able to manage something that is might even be better for the club. But we are looking at least two options. But one of them, we will be able we will be able to do something. Okay, putting up all the news. Okay, putting up all the AHLers just never happens in the NHL, and that would not be doing the right thing for some of the people on the Moose, and nor would it be doing the right thing for some of the players who really are actively engaged and trying very hard to put forth effort and adjust the game and play the system properly. So I think that when it comes to the press, and especially they're like, if Jamie and Sarah put something together, or some others who are close to the Jets, uh, explain the uh, how things happen in the world of operations. I'm definitely a hockey ops kind of gal. There's Yes, absolutely, 100%. Not a single. There's nothing else that I would be better at. Uh, Kind of like letting people get some education just about the things in general, like a hockey 101. And but I do really think that I've picked up enough now. I was sensing it last season, but I wasn't really sure where it was coming from and how the dynamics and power dynamics were really working out. But I am not entirely sure that proper communication happened from the bench to upper management. There are telltale signs of that happening with other clubs, even if they're not saying it out loud. And I do mean other clubs that have recently won Stanley Cups. And one club that hasn't recently won the Stanley Cup, but they are competitors and contenders every year. You understand what I'm saying? Okay. It's very hard to win a Stanley Cup, people. Right? So I'm including that club, even though they haven't won a Stanley Cup recently, they're competitors and contenders every year. Okay. There are telltale signs from the bench, the press, the team, and of course, management that certain types of communication happen clearly and often. That is not present anywhere. I cannot find a single indicator anywhere that proper communications and proper considerations are being made. And that does mean that upper management is the major issue with the Winnipeg Jets. Some of the press sometimes, which is why I would say that press who are looking for things to write about in the summer and looking for things to kind of study and talk about, or might want to talk about how coaches in general in the NHL and specifically our Neil, um, may plan the roster and how the lineups go based on certain teams. And the Jets may have success with these two guys as defensive pairings. You understand? I mean, sometimes it does have to do with how well certain lines and combinations do against other franchises. Right? It's kind of like a short form of the batting order in baseball. Uh, so I am 100% saying that if I were a GM, there was no possible way I would have gone past game 8 in my losing streak without making sure a very concise and informative public statement was made. And for me, I would have said preferably I want to do live press availability, and give myself at least an hour schedule if I needed to go over that if I could. And if, for health reasons for me, if it became an issue, I would still record a public statement and go over, yes, we consistently on a weekly basis have reevaluations of the moose all the time. It never changes. We do this every single week. We have doors open and conversations happening with, the things not to be said out loud. Sometimes that annoys some of you and pisses you off, but you're not going to find that different in any other club either. Okay? They're just things don't get said. But there's some things that actually, absolutely 100% should be said. So I understood what Chevy was getting at when he did his half year, but I was absolutely, you know, put off by the fact that there was not a single peep from upper management during that 11-game losing streak. If I were a GM, there's no way. There's no way I could be in the hospital with all kinds of crap on me, and I would still, you understand, right? Like all crappy and raspy, or I like have somebody with me if I couldn't talk. If I had tubes down my throat, I'd be like writing shit down. You know what I'm saying? Like, tell them this, tell them this. You understand? That I would not be asking anybody's damn permission. I just send out an email to the coaches, to the the ownership, and to the rest of management to be like, hey, hi, I'm putting stuff out to the press at the end of the week. It's just an FYI. I mean, that was a serious, you know, that was a serious general management faux pas. It wasn't some tiny little thing. It wasn't some tiny little thing like, oh, well, we could have gotten this goalie for this much, but we signed this goalie for this much, and he's not as strong when it comes to this. And, but I wasn't really sure, and I took a day too long, and somebody else snatched him up. Okay, that's a little faux pas. That's a little thing. Okay. A big thing is not addressing the general public, waiting until mid-season. That was absolutely the wrong thing to do. I know that there are GMs, active current GMs, who would definitely have put some information out around the time of the losing streak. And that in and of itself was unacceptable. True North Sports and Entertainment. But how Mr. Shoveldayoff handled his press availability yesterday, his apparent thinking, his demeanor, and the fact he had a prepared statement. And I'm getting the sense from, the frustration came from players. I mean, some, yes, I mean, they kind of know, all right, I need to play better and we need to come back and not let this happen again. And, this really what, and, I think that was some really good, honest pointing out Scott Arneal press. I mean, he tried to answer as honestly as he could. But from all of this, which I've all reviewed over, and I've been walking with this club since it became the Winnipeg Jets, to, again, you have a serious issue, and it needs to be taken care of right now. This is not, let's wait and give him another chance. You know who you give a chance to? You give a chance to Coach Arneal and the coaching staff and to the team that are going to be Jets come next October by getting a much better GM in place immediately. There are actual hockey owners. There's few ownership groups know who I am. There are some NHL goalies, active and retired, know who I am. I never take anything lightly. I make sure I understand the power dynamics. I did not say a word for at least 12 years, but I was listening and I was paying attention. And I was making sure, okay, well, where are some things maybe the press might need to back off a little on this, but here's where you can concentrate and gives you things to write about, and you don't have to hump and peck so much. It's just unacceptable the way a lot of things were handled this year, and that is a major issue that management did not make any statements to the public except for one little time spent with Mike McIntyre, which says, I mean, he was saying that they were, however, okay, the onus is on the general manager at a certain point to, completely 100%. Okay, here's press availability. Let's get at this. By game 8, I would have simply just sent an email to everyone to say, FYI, I'm sending out. I'm doing press at the end of this week. We're gonna discuss. And we're gonna say, look, you evaluate the moose every week, and that's what we're doing. So there may be some, cap space we might be able to maneuver. We got conversations with 2 other clubs, so on and so forth. You understand? And I would have also mentioned what I already mentioned today. That, you have to understand, like I would say, coaching staff, they have to work under certain provisions. And sometimes, some of you may not like that these 2 were paired together on the defensive pairings and you wanted to see something else. But, all indication is that these 2 are really good at shutting down, you know, this line on the other team who are really good at splitting deep. But these guys don't let it happen. You see what I'm saying? I would have definitely tried to, you know, educate and make some statements to say, I realize there's a lot of conversations just that, the coaching staff and, people pre scout games. There are people who watch teams that they're getting ready to play. And there are guys who, are on the bench who go on and off and are playing game in and game out who kind of have a knack sometimes. So sometimes setting up the lineup may not be what some of you wanted to see, but it's definitely something that the other team didn't want to see. You see what I'm getting at? Okay? So I would have clarified some things having to do with some of the criticisms toward coaching. I would have clarified some things considering some of the, conversations about aging. I would have clarified some things about letting people know every week, every single week. Okay, this club, we have an evaluation of every single one of the news players, all right? And we might be able to maneuver, we're looking to try and maneuver some salary cap and figure out how to maneuver the roster, according to the rules and regulations of the National Hockey League. You understand? I mean, there's limitations. But I would have reiterated that. I would have explained some things that were, you know, put on the coach from a lot of the vocal people. And I would have said, okay, well, it isn't the coach being afraid to pull people up, everybody. You're aiming that at the wrong person. Okay. When we look at things and talk to the coach for at least 15 minutes every game day, we do not ever miss that communication time. I'll make sure people know. He's mentioned some needs, and I've looked, and there's some, others who, are with management who understand kind of what the need is and what the coach might be saying might be helpful. And it is on us, management, to sign off on pulling up someone from the news. We have the constraints of the salary cap, so sometimes it's just not possible. But we look for ways to maneuver. So maybe we can't get this guy up. Okay. But maybe we can do something else that is possible. I would definitely let people know you're aiming at the coach, but ultimately, GM has to be the one that signs off on movement because there's a salary cap and there are roster restrictions. And if I felt that maybe I hadn't really, gotten or understood from the coach, maybe he's not even sure. I would definitely have some people like spending some time hanging around, coaching, hanging around the guys in the room to just talk to them, get a general idea of things, and maybe something would be discovered that maybe even the coach really wasn't sure, or the coaching staff. If I were the GM, the press and the Winnipeg Jets fans would definitely know the steps that are being taken and to reassure them that, oh, yeah, we know and we're going over every single thing that we do. And if I need to spend a little more time, you know, kind of listening to the coach who might be helpful, or maybe we need to um, look at a certain trade waivers, I would absolutely make sure that those things were known. And I would absolutely make sure that some of you who are pointing at the coach and coaching staff, I would say, no, ultimately, the GM signs off on that. And so don't be thinking that the coach hasn't tried or the coach is not doing what the coach is supposed to do. Right. GMs have to sign off on uh, right players from the news going up and down and getting pulled. It's a salary cap thing. We can't bust the salary cap. We have to handle player personnel a certain way, and sometimes some of the things that some of the more vocal fans wanted to happen weren't really even possible. Some of them might have been. Okay, I'm not saying some of you were partially correct. Something needs to be done, but there are these considerations that maybe a lot of you don't know. And yes, any NHL club, as much as a coach might want to, right, a coach might be like, well, we need, a winger. What do we? The management office always has to be the one that signs off on it anyway, because they're the ones who manage salary cap and all those other things. Okay? Those are things I would have done. the fact that management just went quiet, that was a major, major, major issue. There are some clubs today in the NHL. A couple of them did not make the playoffs. However, um, their fan base in general are way more understanding of why, which did include some injuries. I mean, I wouldn't say an excuse sometimes because it happens to all teams that everybody's got injuries. Some, however, it does get to the point where you just can't overcome it. And so teams that didn't make the playoffs, sometimes that is the case. There's other things, but injuries can, yes, be the reason that a club is taken out of playoff consideration one season. I mean, that happens. Um, Teams can do their best to adjust and can't always overcome that. I mean, that does happen sometimes in the National Hockey League, and there is a club that I'm thinking of right now that, you know, like the way the injuries happen and key points of the season really, yes, was the major reason why it was very, very difficult for this team to be competitive enough to get a playoff spot. But in general, their fan base understands some things and has been informed of some things. And even though they didn't make the playoffs, generally their fan base and, majority of the press are all aware of certain things and understanding and not so much annoyed, pissed off, angry, disenfranchised, disillusioned. Because that club kept the press aware, kept the general public aware, the bench, there was way more coming from the club that helped everyone understand the situations as they were progressing through the season. So at this point, I am saying I find the actions of Mr. Shoveldayoff and his management to be lacking in large, very distinctly. It's just not. This is not NHL club or player friendly activity, and the fact that he did not at any point address the public and make sure there was some, education and make sure that there was some, comments that helped people understand we are doing something, we're doing this, we're doing that. Obviously, no, 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 we want to help the team as best we can. We're looking at options, we're doing this, we're doing that. I really do think that if True North Sports and Entertainment continues on with management as it is, you will find that the possibility for bankruptcy will come up much faster than you might like, or being forced to leave the team. Okay, the fans have been patient enough, 15 years with the GM. Some of them are not maybe expressing it properly, but I know that there are GMs in the NHL, there's no freaking way they would stay quiet to the press and the public in the middle. I mean, they would not let an 11-game losing streak just go without being involved with the public And you understand? And certainly put a lot of that on Coach Arneal by just staying quiet. And he's the one people see. So he's the one who's taking heat. That some of it wasn't even heat that he was supposed to be taking. So I will say, Winnipeggers, you should be willing to let Coach Arneal and the team, okay, have another season, but with a different GM. I guarantee you, positive changes will happen. Mr. Cheveldayoff let a lot of heat hit Coach Arneal, when in fact those are things that management not only are responsible for, but didn't bother to educate anyone, didn't bother to help alleviate some of that pressure from Scott Arneal. I find it absolutely unacceptable. So I am now asking those of you in the hockeyverse who are good at helping teams and making sure they don't get and helping them, turn a corner or whatever. Yes, please do, gentlemen, jump in here, because if things continue, it might not take even 2 seasons for this club to be heading downhill at a breakneck pace. So I know there are people, and I know the right people will see this, no matter how many followers I have. And I'm letting people of Winnipeg who I've been now conversating with know who I am, and understand. I understand where some of you are coming from. Some of it needs to be like education. And yes, Mr. Cheveldayoff just let all the pressure hit the team, and most particularly Scott Arneal, and that was wrong. He did not intervene when he should have, and he should have been more available to the public to help them understand some of the actions that were being taken. And so, for all of that, I absolutely think that True North better be searching for a new GM. And if you don't want to lose this franchise, let's just say, you know, I don't foresee you being able to maintain this franchise without changing the general manager immediately. All right, so that's that. Some people know who I am. Some of you may not, but they're hockey insiders in the National Hockey League, And I don't make snap decisions, but I also don't wait until it's a huge emergency either. For those reasons, I absolutely think that True North Sports and Entertainment need to immediately put out a very, very thorough search for a GM. You might have someone internally, but also look externally. And so start talking to those people who have helped save franchises. Start talking to those people who have helped get franchises out of bankruptcy. I mean, like Mario Lemieux's around somewhere. They're guys who were involved with Tampa Bay, had to clean up a mess. When you know what I'm saying, there are people who know. There are people who can give you suggestions. You understand? That's my final say, and it will not change. But go Jets, go! I appreciate the conversation. It may seem like I've come from out of nowhere, and who the hell is this, dumbass, and blah blah blah. Well, you will soon know more. But my assessment is 100%. I'm 100% sure of it. I absolutely have no issue saying that the way things were handled this year are inappropriate to the National Hockey League, to the People, some of the press, a little, I gotta be honest, some of the press, right, you trying to cross lines that you don't even understand. So some of you need to back down a little. Maybe focus on helping to educate the fans a little more about how things actually work. But yeah, Scott Arneal, okay, took some, took fire, heavy fire for things that really he had no control over. And Mr. Cheveldayoff was absolutely wrong for allowing that to continue. So I'm saying get a new GM, give coaching in this team another chance with a new GM. All right, everybody, take care of yourselves. Okay, be well.